I'm a school board member in Roxbury, New Jersey, and I remember seeing Gina Genovese speak once, and I kindly wrote a letter to, an email actually, to the administrator on my own school board and an administrator in the next town over, that we should look at consolidation. We should look at just studying the consolidation process. And I actually got an email back from both administrators stating there's no cost savings in the process. Well, the fact that two administrators would give me that response was certainly what I expected, because when it comes down to it, I don't think most local officials at that level will consider doing a consolidation simply because it can affect them. When I heard Gina's presentation several weeks ago and several months ago, she gave us the tools and the steps on how local people can take the consolidation process into their own hands. And so I invited her to come by and talk about that process. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Gina Genovese.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Great. I'm Gina Genovese. I'm Executive Director and co-founder of Courage to Connect New Jersey.
And I'm Wendy McHale, co-founder with Gina, and we are a nonpartisan, non-profit organization that educates the public about consolidation. What are the options available to us? We're going to start out just looking at the state of New Jersey differently. So people are looking at this stack of things. What is this up here? What's going on? So what I have here are 566 placards, one for every municipality in the state of New Jersey. And over the course of Gina's ongoing presentation, I will be flipping through each one, and you'll be amazed how many you've never heard of. The interesting thing about these 566 is that they do 80% of the same thing. So the question is there a better way to deliver services in our local communities?
So how do we get like this? We started out actually with 104 townships, and about 120 years ago, they started to fracture off for all sorts of reasons, and most reasons do not really apply to today. Sewage, roads, dry town, religion, train station. Absolutely, 6 men getting in a room could say, I want the power. That's all it took. And they could take the town for themselves. And so here we are, stuck with 566 municipalities. The important thing to understand is that we're not talking about anything new here tonight in New Jersey. We actually have found an 1895 New York Times article that talks about consolidating the oranges. South Orange, Orange, West Orange. And they go, an assemblyman says, you know what, we really need to start looking into this. The city physician at the time, which was a huge role back then in 1895, he said the oranges must be made one city so that all our public departments may be better and more economically managed. This is 1895. It is only selfishness that has kept us apart. And so at Courage to Connect New Jersey, we go around the state and we say, is it only selfishness that's going to keep us apart in 2012? And that really is our decision. We come down here and there's the oldest resident says, yes, we must do this. And then down here the mayor says, no, stop, we need to take a study. And what's amazing is this is sort of the scenario that's going on today. And then we found this other one from 1934. Again, we're not talking about anything new here in New Jersey. And this is Governor Moore in 1934. And what he says is that at least 3 official attempts to secure municipal consolidation or regional reorganization of local government functions in New Jersey for purposes of economy and efficiency have failed in the last 2 years. As the matter stands now, it is up to organizations of citizens to carry forward the movement without the aid of the state. This is 1934. This is our governor who said this. It has to be citizens that are going to do this. Amazing. And so here we are looking at the state of New Jersey differently. Because unless we understand that we're all in this together, we're not going to get out of this situation. Because we've had trouble and struggled paying for these towns, not just recently, but for decades. Back in 1976, actually, when a lot of towns were struggling, we instituted the income tax. And it's important to note that 100% of your income tax goes to pay for this municipal structure. It's dedicated in our New Jersey Constitution for property tax relief for municipalities and schools. And so in 1976, that's what we did. Then we had this brilliant idea that Atlantic City, if we put in Atlantic City, we can take that revenue and we can give it to the schools and we're going to solve all of our problems. Well, I don't know how long that solved the problems. Right now, we're bailing out Atlantic City. And then, as the gentleman said, the pensions. Back in the 80s, we had this brilliant idea. Let's not fund the pensions. Let's just stop funding the pensions, and then, we'll have enough money to pay for property taxes. And look at where that has gotten us now. And then we've had caps before. We had a 4% cap. We've already had caps on our municipal governments. We had a 4% cap. We took 0.5% of the sales tax increase. That is totally dedicated to pay for property tax relief. 0.5% of our sales tax. We've had rebate checks stopped or severely reduced. We used to get property tax rebate checks. Severely reduced if there's any. And now we have a 2% cap. What do you think a 2% cap is going to do to our local governments? And so what we have to think of is thinking as one. If you want to know how much we're paying for this structure, you have to take 100% of your income tax, 0.5% of the sales tax, and what you pay in property tax, because that is all dedicated to this structure. We are in this together. And so what have towns been doing? What have towns been doing to try to keep up? Well, I am a former mayor of Long Hill Township in Morris County, 8,700 people, which translates into 3,100 households. And when you're an elected official, a local elected official in New Jersey, the number one question you get is, what are you going to do about my property taxes? Now, you don't get it once a day, you get it 2 or 3 or 4 times a day. And so you start looking into, well, what could we potentially do? And that's why I founded Courage to Connect New Jersey, because I really realized that my town of 8,700, 3,100 households, should not exist by itself. That for 3,100 households to pay for a police department, administrative structure, and a DPW, Department of Public Works, was too great. The burden was too great. And what else have towns been doing? I mean, we're all trying. We don't point fingers at anybody. But as the freeholder candidate said, he talked about shared services. Well, when I was mayor, we had about 12, 15 shared services. It's been around for a while. Right now it's a catch-all phrase, but it's been around for a while. So I was the mayor of Long Hill Township. And we shared a fire inspector with Milburn Township. And then you have to worry about who's going to pay the pension, who's going to pay the health care costs. It's a shared service contract. Then we had Bernards Township. We actually had the first police communication merger in the history of New Jersey, where we merged our police communication. We had merged the employees. It was like a 3-year process. So we merged our employees, and then after a few years, now we've gone out of this agreement, and we've gone up to police communications in the county. We also found that buying gas in a larger amount, buy it in a large amount, you get a cheaper price. So we bought gas at Bernards Township. So every time our police officer wants to gas up, they go to Bernards Township to gas up. But then again, you have this problem. Gas goes up, gas goes down. It's a contract. You have to manage it. We had a health officer that we shared with Madison and East Hanover, 2 towns, health officer. And I'm saying to myself, if we're not large enough to have a health officer, maybe we're not large enough to exist by ourselves. We had a building inspector with Harding Township. So we would have limited hours. We shared a building inspector with Harding Township. We have equipment, tree equipment with Chatham Township. We had a sewer camera, because we have sewer issues. There's a lot of infrastructure problems with sewage, and very important. So we bought a camera with them together. We bought a truck to use the camera. We have street sweeping equipment that we share now with Berkeley Heights. But you need to sweep your streets after it rains. So who manages who gets the truck when you get it? we have an interlocal for first aid here with Berkeley Heights. Watchung Hills, we're in a regional high school system. We have to patrol it once a week. And then Somerset County. Somerset County, we were in a great co-op for equipment. We did our animal control with Somerset County. And so you start to see what shared services is. And this is absolutely a road that we can go down. But you start to see that potentially in 10 years, your town is not going to do anything by itself. And is that what you want? Because we talk about loss of control being the problem. You have towns that are struggling today. My heart really goes out to any local official. It is very difficult to give you the services that you know and you deserve and still stay under that 2% cap. And so what are they doing? There's layoffs, there's attrition. We go around and we speak at, towns. We find out they've laid off 4 people. Attrition is just like a layoff because that means somebody's left and you haven't replaced them. This is what's going on now. We have furloughs going on in the state. Towns are finding it very difficult. They're thinking about taking garbage and taking it out of the tax levy just so they can make ends meet. As this gentleman said, we're having problems with debt. Right now, if you have an employee and you have not saved the money for those sick days and that employee retires, you are allowed to bond all of that into the future. We're bonding all that into the future. You used to put 5% down on capital improvements, and now you can bond that into the future. And this is what towns are trying to do just to make ends meet. They are really tapping their surplus now. And is this what we want? We have tax appeals. Last month I was here and we were talking about tax appeals, and that's all great. But tax appeals, especially business tax appeals, that's less revenue for your town. How do they make that up? And despite all of these, taking the garbage out, despite all these shared services, the aggregate of local governments in 2000 was $5 billion. In 2010, it is $12.5 billion. Where are we going? And so we look at this and we say, okay, we have this redundancy. Why can't we do anything about it? Why is it 1895, 1934? Well, there's some problems, and we'll talk about it. One of the major obstacles is loss of town identity. Who wants to lose their town identity? So that's a huge stopping point. You'll see in the paper if there's any mayor or anybody, they'll go, oh, my town doesn't want to lose its identity. So we need to talk about it. And so let's look into loss of town identity. We use Woodbridge Township as a model, and we'll go through other examples. But we use Woodbridge Township as a model because it's the oldest township in New Jersey. And what's interesting about Woodbridge is 100 years ago, when every other town was fracturing off and we had boroitis, Woodbridge basically remained whole. And so right now it's 10 towns and 1 community. It's Colonian, better known as Colonia, Island, Avenel, Seawarren, Caseby, Woodbridge. Woodbridge proper only has 20% of all the people in Woodbridge Township. And you start to see how you could have 10 identifiable areas under 1 government. 1 town hall, 1 police department, 1 school district, 1 superintendent. What's amazing about Woodbridge is what if it had fractured off like the rest of New Jersey? We'd see 10 mayors, 10 police departments, 10 or more school districts. And you start to see maybe this is the cause of the highest property taxes in the country. Wendy, you want to just talk a little bit about, I'll give you a break?
Yeah. So people always say to us, oh, these towns, they're just neighborhoods, right? It's like a development, it's just a small little bit of a town. We've got a neighborhood, it's the development that was built in the 70s and such. But these towns, Avenel, Colonia, Island, Woodbridge, and Fords, have populations of 14 to 17,000 people. That makes them bigger than 75% of the municipalities in the state of New Jersey. So we're not talking neighborhoods, we're talking identifiable towns. These towns could easily stand by themselves. They are bigger than most in the state. And the funny thing is, if this had broken apart, people would say, oh, it would never, ever, ever work for these guys to be one municipality. They're too different. We've got an Asian Indian community here, we've got a middle-class community, this is over here a very industrial community down here. So it's like, and this is a little bit more like a city in Woodbridge. Oh, they could never work, would never work if these guys came together. So this is a really great example of, one, how government can work together, and how each of these towns maintains their own identity. And there are over 300 identifiable towns in the state of New Jersey that are as identifiable as Colonia, Avenel. You might know some of them around here. I'm sure you've heard of Mount Tabor, Lake Hiawatha. We have
Basking Ridge.
Basking Ridge, yes. Convent Station, Whippany.
Yes, we're in
Small little
Whippany right
places.
now. You know, if Whippany, if Hanover Township is to merge with another town, is Whippany going to lose its identity? No. I was the mayor of Long Hill Township. I was asked 100 times if I was the mayor of Long Valley. There is no mayor of Long Valley.
And
Long Valley.
Long Hill is known as Millington,
Millington.
Sterling, and Gillette. People don't even know where Long Hill is. So it's not, does the name of your government, and is that really
Essential.
the essential, and is that who determines how your services are? Does that matter what the name of your government is? Does that matter how your services are provided?
Another big one is Short Hills. People say, Short Hills, that's never going to merge. I look at them and say, it's already a connected community, because Short Hills pays its taxes to Millburn. Short Hills has a train station, has a zip code, has a mall. If Millburn Township merges with another town, is Short Hills going to lose its identity? No, so that's why we need to look at it. This is a huge stumbling block for why consolidation has never happened in New Jersey. We haven't found one piece of evidence that a town is going to lose its identity. And that's important. Another huge stumbling block is loss of control. Again, we showed shared services. There's loss of control there. There's new words that are coming out and surfacing. Outsourcing, privatization. And that's fine. Sometimes it may work. But that's loss of control. Is that the road that you want to go down? Because that's what's coming. And it's important to discuss that. Is consolidation maybe strengthening your local government? Is it making it more capable, stronger? You have Woodbridge Township, they have an economic development officer, redevelopment officer. That's huge. Economics in this state is the most important thing moving forward. If you have children and they graduate high school and go to college, do you not want them to maybe come back here to work? That's what's so important. People said to me, well, you know, Port Reading, that's just like all industry. Well, but that's important as well. We need those components of industry that are so-called tax ratables. You need the combination. That's how a town works. And so you potentially need areas like that. That's what extends the tax base. They have their own full-time grant writer. They can afford a full-time grant writer, bringing in millions of dollars. They have their own IT department. And so you start to see what a larger town can afford. My town went from two garbage pickups a week to one garbage pickup. And maybe next year they're going to take it out of the tax levy, because that's what they're going to have to do. And then we have a third obstacle. And the third obstacle is those people. I don't want to be with those people. You know, we have to talk about this because it's a huge stumbling block. We did a presentation in Summit, New Jersey. The gentleman got up and he said, I don't want to be with those people in Summit.
No, it's Springfield.
Springfield, excuse me. Thank you. I don't want to be with those people in Springfield, New Jersey. I said, okay, sir, everybody has their opinion, and if that's what you want to continue, those people, then you be Summit, New Jersey. But then we come to find out that Summit, New Jersey has the most people that make over $200,000 a year in the state of New Jersey. The most people that make over $200,000 a year in the state of New Jersey. They also have 25% of their population makes under $35,000. This gentleman is already with those people. I'm those people to somebody. We're all those people. And what do those people want?
Last I looked, didn't those people want good schools, lower taxes, safe streets? It's radical notions, all of those.
But that's huge. It's a big stopping point. And if that's what we want to cling on to, then really New Jersey's not going to go anywhere. That's the truth. Loss of town identity, loss of control. Those people. Huge stumbling blocks. But why did I really found Courage to Connect New Jersey? I did it because I saw this law in 2007. There was this law passed. And I looked at the law, and it gave citizens the same power and rights as local elected officials to begin the consolidation process. And I looked at this law and I said to myself, who is going to tell people that they have this power? And that is basically why I founded Courage to Connect New Jersey. Because I don't believe as a former elected official that we can cut our way out of our problems. I do not believe that we can raise taxes to solve our problems. But we have to redesign the structures of New Jersey. We have to make them more efficient. And so this law, what we've done is we have written a guidebook. This is our second edition guidebook. I'm happy to report that our third edition guidebook is in printing and it's going to be ready for our workshop. But what this does is it goes through the 6 steps. Do we have it up here, Wynn? Okay. It goes through the 6 steps of consolidation. Organizing, prepare an application, obtain local approval, either through petitions or resolution, obtain state approval, the study commission, and then it goes to the referendum for the voters. And it's not a complicated process, but you definitely need a resource, and that's what we are. We go over the petition process and study commission, how to form that, and we are an incredible resource and are learning all the time. Because when we first started out, people would say, consolidation has never happened in New Jersey, and it's never going to happen in New Jersey. Well, I'm happy to tell you that you can't say that anymore. Because this past November, the Princetons overwhelmingly voted to consolidate. They will now not be Princeton Township and Princeton Borough. They will be one town. This coming November, they're going to be electing one government. And so you can't say that it's never happened in New Jersey. We have an incredible example down in Princeton. It was the 4th time that they tried it, so they knew a lot about this issue. But 2 mayors got together, 2 resolutions, and now they're going to have a stronger government. They are going to save over $3.2 million. And now when they're really looking at that was just employees, that's all that salaries. Now they're looking into, you don't need 2 attorneys, you do not need 2 audits. They're looking into the operations. They're looking into not having to service or have 9 extra police cars. They're looking into all the other areas. They're looking into their future and they're seeing a very sustainable, strong future. And it's really exciting. They have taken this step. Their police department is going to go from 60 to 51, and they're going to add a few services that they've had to take out. And they are the pioneers of the state. But we've also worked with Merchantville and Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill is a rather large town, about 75,000. Merchantville is 3,800 in population, 0.6 miles. And the citizens in Merchantville said, you know, we don't even have a township administrator. We do not really have any services. We want to merge with nearby Cherry Hill. Mayor of Cherry Hill said, this is a good idea, let's look into it. And so the citizens of Merchantville have worked with the mayor and council of Cherry Hill, and they have formed Consolidation Study Commission. And now we have Scotch Plains and Fanwood. Scotch Plains and Fanwood are two towns, one school district, completely consolidated, basically one town and two governments. And it's an interesting story what happened in Scotch Plains and Fanwood, because they have taken shared service studies. They took a shared service study for the police department, they took a shared study for their Department of Public Works, and they've taken a shared study for the library. 3 big shared studies the last 3 years. Nothing has happened. Oh, we can save $1 million here, we can save $500,000 here, we can save this there. And then the citizens are like, well, when are we ever going to realize the savings? But it's not easy to share services at that level. What they were looking into was organizing their police department where you would have to have a separate commission on top of the police department if they consolidated their police department. So you would have 5 commissioners from Fanwood, 5 from Scotch Plains. That's a difficult situation. That's not an easy situation to be in. It's almost like it's never going to work because each town is going to want the best for their town. It's riddled with strife. You also have Scotch Plains at 75% and Fanwood is 25%. So they're going to be a tug of war here to try to figure out who's going to get the best deal from this police department. It complicates things. The DPW, they'd have the same thing. They'd have to have 5, another level of bureaucracy overseeing it. And you start to see why it doesn't move forward, because it's very difficult. Now they're looking in contracted police services. So that's where Scotch Plains would contract out the police services of Fanwood. You say, oh, that's a great idea. But you had Collingswood and Woodland down in South Jersey. They did that. And then after a while, it didn't work. They actually had their police cars with Collingswood and Woodland. After 3 years, that broke apart. You have Alpha and Powhatan. Powhatan does Alpha's police. But now with budget constraints, Alpha goes back to Powhatan and says, you know what? You need to lower the fee. And because they're not thinking as one, you start to see how inherent in these are a lot of difficulties. They're not easy to maintain. And so that is why in Scotch Plains and Fanwood, a lot of these have not moved forward, and the people don't understand it. Because what they really need to do is consolidate. They already have a consolidated school district. They're already one town, their kids are together. And so that was the impetus for citizens in both of those towns to have the first ever citizen-driven petition in both towns for a consolidation study. It's just a study, too. This is not consolidating. This is figuring out what it's going to look like and what we could save, what you could potentially save. And so now before us in the state of New Jersey, we have citizen and citizen moving forward. We have citizen and government moving forward. And we have government and government that has already passed. We have all 3 examples before us. And we need to build on that. And so in order to build on that, what we're doing next Wednesday is we're hosting a workshop. And we're going to have the chief of staff of Cherry Hill, and we're going to have a councilman from Merchantville and the citizens group that drove that, and they're going to share with you their story of how that worked. And then we're going to have the Princeton commissioners. And the Princeton commissioners are going to tell you about the duties and responsibilities of what they faced and how they managed through that process and the lessons that they learned. And we also, my research director and I are going to go through the guidebook in detail so that everyone will have an understanding of what their powers and their rights are. But I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of local elected officials out there, she's still going, that understand this. I've had over 80 elected officials reach out to our organization. She's not done yet. And it's absolutely, I think there's a moment in time in New Jersey where we can actually restructure our state because the pressure on towns is enormous. And sometimes it's difficult for local elected officials to come forward and say, you know what, it's not working. And so they can't necessarily come out and tell you, hey, I think we should merge another town. It's important that you, the citizen, have an understanding of this issue and have a seat at the table when this happens. Because you are part of the town. And sometimes elected officials have trouble saying something innovative because they get slammed. And I know that because that happened to me. When I was mayor, I asked my administrator to just bring up all the non-essential services in my town. I said, you know what, if we have budget cuts coming forward, let's look at what's non-essential. Let's look at the budget and the items that we could potentially cut in the future. Non-essential. Open and honest government. Let's just talk about it. I got my head handed to me. I was going to take away the senior bus. I was going to take away this. I had absolutely no thoughts about what I was going to do. I just wanted to talk about it openly. And so I'm here to tell you, when you're on the other side, it's not that easy to say things that potentially can push and be innovative. And you need to have public support. And that's what makes this issue incredible. It's an incredible issue. Because it's something that people and local governments can work together. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. We're all taxpayers, and it's an issue that we can all agree upon. We need to be more efficient. We need to make systemic changes in New Jersey in order to be sustainable in the future. And as you can see, you're looking at the cause of the highest property taxes for New Jersey and the nation. So she's not done yet. Almost. But we are all in this together. 42 of these towns are patrolled by state police. We all pay for it. I don't say that because I want divisiveness. I just say that because we're all in this together and we need to restructure our way out of this. But these all, look at how many are under 1,000. It's truly amazing.
This is 100 people are paying for that one.
Lock Harbor and Allenhurst, they're actually thinking about merging. We're working a little bit with them now. Travis Stops is a golf course, right, Wendy?
Golf course, yep. And we've got an airport.
Yep.
Is that the airport?
Yep. The airport.
So we have a time where we're all working together. Governor Christie also came out in the Princetons and said that he was going to pay for 20% of the first year implementation costs. What he proposed in legislation is you take the implementation costs, you can spread them over 5 years. At least it's something that when you spread over 5 years, you're going to be saving in the next 3 to 5 years. And that the state would pay the first year implementation cost. So if the governor is working on this, the legislature, local government, and the citizens, I think we have a unique opportunity in New Jersey right now to solve this problem. And I think we have Princeton, which is a pioneer. Wendy, before you get to the tower, as we like to call it, I just want to bring your attention to this right here. And what we've done is just taken a sampling of towns in Morris County. This is just a random sampling. And what do you think these numbers represent?
Voter turnout.
Well, close. This is 10% of the voter turnout. This is the number of signatures that's required for anyone who lives in these towns to start a consolidation study. This is the number of signatures.
The bar is low.
The bar is low. It's 10% of the last General Assembly election, and last General Assembly election, we had the lowest voter turnout in the history of New Jersey. To put this in perspective, Scotch Plains needed like 880 signatures for the 2009 election. They needed 369 in the 2011 election. Look at these numbers. This is for a non-threatening consolidation study commission. Because if both towns are not going to win, it should not move forward. This is just to find out. Number of signatures required on a petition. If you want to learn to find out how to do it, our workshop is a great place to learn it from the people that have done it. I mean, and that's an amazing thing because the citizens of Merchantville have also reached out to us and said, you know what, we want to mentor the next citizens group. We want to mentor them. The Princeton commissioners, they want to mentor the next commissioners. This is a process we have to build on in New Jersey. Because we're a great state, we're a strong state, and we need to make sure that we get more efficient at doing this as well, that we learn from the past, we learn from mistakes. And we have a lot of people that are willing to share what they've learned. But Wendy needs to tell you about the tower.
A little bit about my tower. It's, this is a pretty good example of why we have such high property taxes in the state of New Jersey.
Have you ever thought about putting that into a PowerPoint?
I kind of like doing the Vanna White thing.
It gets the message across.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does get the message across. You know, you have to understand, if I said 566, you'd leave here and next week say, what? 320?
So I have two lines on my stack. I just want to point out, anybody have a guess what this red line down the bottom is? There are 29 towns below that line. Any guess what that
Under 1,000?
Under 1,000. Under 500.
50,000. We only have
50,000.
we only have 5 towns over 100,000.
Those are cities.
Yes, those are,
Well, that's under.
Woodbridge is one of them. So 50,000, the thing that's interesting about 50,000 is that is a population number that the federal government says you can get access to federal funding more simply if you have a population over 50,000. We're always complaining about we send so much money down to Washington, we get nothing back. We're not playing by a very fundamental rule that they have set up, 50,000 of population. So we're saying that's one target point to look at for finding consolidation partners. Maybe 50,000 is a good number that makes you eligible for simpler funding. Right now the funding goes through the county, then the towns compete for that funding from the county, and then it's distributed locally. So it's kind of nice to take that middle step out if you don't have to have it. Then I've got this other line right about here. Any guesses what that line might be? Let's sort it out. It's no big deal. Yeah, 10,000. 10,000.
A winner, we don't have a prize.
Yeah. Self-esteem, that's the prize. Okay, 10,000. 3/5 of the towns in the state of New Jersey are less than 10,000. That means about 3,300 households are paying for the entire structure. That's a lot of burden to pay for a police department, administration, in many cases the school system, and all your costs are being carried by 3,000 people. And in some cases you saw it was 3 or 5 households. So we're just saying that, we've got a lot of government here, a lot of government doing the same thing. And is it possible for us in New Jersey to do it differently? Is it possible for us to do it smarter?
And it's not just about what we're going to lose, because people say, well, people are going to lose their jobs. They're losing them now. Let's make organizational structures that are sustainable in the future. We went down and did a presentation in Waretown. Waretown, there isn't Waretown, it's actually Ocean Township. It's near Long Beach Island. And we said, wow, if 4 or 5 of your communities get together, it still won't probably go over 4 miles in length. There's a lot of small towns down there. But they could potentially hire a tourism director, promote tourism. It's not just what's going to be taken away, it's what we can potentially have because we're a stronger community that we can afford it. And so that's what's important to understand, is that potentially this is about strengthening our local government. There's also more grants when you're over 30,000 in population. You're more eligible for state grants. The world opens up. And we need to make this change. Now, today in the Star Ledger, the mayor from Princeton Township, Princeton Merger, a shining example, had an op-ed that was published in the Star Ledger today. We've printed some copies and they're out there if you're interested in reading it. And then we have our agenda workshop that you can look at, and it's going to be a concise next Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. We're doing it right 12 p.m. We're doing it so that you can basically go through the whole process and really learn. We have a lot of citizens from around the state. We have local officials. We have a freeholder coming. We have an assemblywoman coming. And so it's a good way for all of us to get in a room and say, you know what? We all can work together and solve the problems in New Jersey. Because that's what this is about. It's about working together. And it's a phenomenal issue. And we'd love to take some of your questions.